And this episode was very simple. Probably the simplest episode. So there's a chance of an uprising, of two uprisings, of two religious uprisings. So a religious uprising begins here. They also want to make the high priest the new king. How the high priest has no interest in being king though, so he decides, why not make a secular government, in a way that I still have power. Religion will still be important to everyday society, but I have no involvement in politics, officially. Guy after high priest said this, he was later killed. And then they realized they don't have a high priest anymore. So you make his son a new high priest. But he doesn't want to lead a rebellion, so they actually accept the old high priest. They accept his father's philosophy. The father doesn't want to rule, and neither does he. And he realizes they're not going to rule if you can't force them to rule. So they have to, just because religious people, because people who are very important to them, don't want to rule. If they did, then they'd be a theology. Then they'd be a theocratic nation. However, due to the choice of the high priest, there is no chance of him actually trying to be king, because he can't be. He can, he just doesn't want to be. But the huge rebellion and also said something to two religions, to two countries, two nations, not countries. Nations, but they aren't countries. So basically, this part of Mesopotamia doesn't believe in the same religion, but doesn't want to be part of the same country. So they began their own rebellion in Sumer. The Sumerians. Meanwhile, in Canaan, I am born to law from WIWICSO. The people here decide to form their own nation in the aim of protecting their own religion. However, since many people don't, most people in their country probably do. And a lot of people here don't want to be part of this nation. It's mostly theocratic nation. A large amount overread their religion, and people declare their own independence. And they don't find a reason actually fighting this war, Third, However, after that, they immediately took over by the Blue Nation, and they actually like this fate. Now the Blue and Red countries have actually reformed. With the reformation of Oman and Sumer, or really Mesopotamia, they decide, why not just stop here? So they decide to so they are planning a new empire. However, both of the kings that were related would be killed. Over the queen of Mesopotamia and the king of Oman, were the only two actual people in power. There wasn't an official. The queen had no husband, the king had no wife, and they wanted to form a new country, so they almost got married, and then were killed, and then were assassinated right here. So there won't be an old empire cannot form here. That's what we have established. Unfortunately, so Phil will not like this. Don't tell him, bro. Don't tell him. So as Persia is slowly dying, this country wants to form an Indian empire. So they decided to make a deal with rule of Mesopotamia. They could keep this part. The king of Persia just moves here. They're out of fear, and brings the entire capital city with them, which means the city is effectively abandoned. Yes, a city was abandoned by Persia just to avoid being conquered. They say they're not true He says himself is not a true Persian, and he is the reason they have lost the war. He takes all the blame and is willing to do so. But some people think this is just so then he is seen as humble and insane power. But it is also his fault why he lost the war anyways, considering he was the most powerful man of all time, and now he is here. Yeah, it was entirely, which meant it was his fault, and you couldn't say anything to change my mind. In the peace treaty, it should be simple. However, a few port cities, the red team barges for demands in return to help unify them. He demands this chunk of land. In this chunk of land. No one knows why he wants these. He just does. Alright, the video's over. Goodbye. Also, I will change to major city later. Here, because a lot of people are moving to Greece. And Romania. Alright, bye.